We're live. Look at that. Now we go back to you. Get that big. All right. Now we're almost same size heads. Good
Look
evening.
at that. Well, I do feel like I have a big head.
As long as they're the same. I get to lean forward. Now we have the same big head. Well, different heads. Ahmed,
Yes.
thank you for joining. I
Likewise.
appreciate it. What would you like to talk about?
Well, this is going to be, I guess, very freestyle, just a friendly chat. Any questions come up, we'll answer, or we'll just go back and forth among ourselves. Nothing on top of mind, but I guess one thing on top of mind, as we were talking earlier, one of my good friends, Norman Bodek, I just got news that he passed away in Japan, and he's a pretty big deal in the lean community. We can talk about his legacy, his work, and how that applies to Agile, or we can talk about other questions. So that's pretty much it.
Great. I'll look in on the chat occasionally, see if we have anything. Norman Bodek, tell me more. I don't know much about this person, and my condolences.
Yes, absolutely. And he's for people who do know him, he's known as the godfather of lean. He had his own publishing company called PCS Press that has published more than 100 books. Many of them were translations of Japanese works to English. And he's been to Japan. I think we lost count after 100. So, and he made the decision that he was going to permanently move to Japan this year. And COVID kind of made it complicated. But eventually he sold his house in Vancouver, Washington, moved to Japan, and he was the happiest person. He was delighted, and he passed away peacefully. So just to connect the dot with Agile. So we talk about Toyota a lot in the Agile community. Toyota katas. We talk about Kaizen. And specifically the improvement cycles. We talk about Shingo. And Norman had a big part in bringing Shingo's work from Japanese to the English world. And, so that is his claim to fame. And, he has earned his right many times over, 100 times over. And he passed away at the age of 88. So he has decades of accomplishment. I was associated with him through the Harada method and later Kazuyoshi Hisano's cognitive coaching method. And we worked on a book together that he authored and I contributed.
Nice.
But yeah, it's been a delightful person.
What's that method?
A Harada method. And
Harada.
More Harada. It's about developing. It's the day-to-day management method. And more recently, it was Hisano, Hisano. And his book actually just last week, Norman published his most recent book that is called CEO Coaching. And that is, I guess, his capstone. And the title and the promise, man, there's a lot of story behind that.
Let's hear. What do you know?
Yeah. So notice that in coaching, Agile coaches, we're not psychotherapists. We're not psychologists. We don't have that much years of training. But we build on something that is older than Agile coaching, which is professional coaching. But then we bring the lean and Agile thinking, technical knowledge, domain knowledge, framework knowledge in Scrum, and Kanban, XP, all those practices, the big gigantic umbrella of Agile. But then again, at the core of it is about that personal connection, developing individuals, developing teams, right? And Indeed. A lot of time these, in typical coaching, ICF, International Coaching Foundation, which many of our coaches are very well versed in, or ORS community, they work on the conscious part of the brain. Right? The conscious part of the brain, and
at the surface, what we're aware of.
So expressing what are your hopes and desires, where you are, integral coaching, what's in it for you, what's the environment like. There's multiple frameworks, but they all kind of tackle the consciousness. There's a whole other community that deals with the unconscious part of the brain. Clean language people do that very well, right? Who? And there's many other communities with the NLP side of things. Okay. And there's a gentleman whose name is Tice, who came up with practical applications of practical neuroscience, and that leads into the unconscious part of the brain, right? And that's where, when you start to tackle the unconscious part, the scale is no longer, I haven't achieved my goal, I'm blocked, I'm stuck, ask me questions and help guide me. The questions are still powerful, but the type of questions change. So the same method you use to go from 1 to 10 is not the same method you apply to go from 1 to 100.
Sure. And to go another order of magnitude.
Exactly.
Deeper?
Yes. Oh, much deeper, much more intrinsic, and literally unlocking this computational power. We get bothered when we have unused, compute cycles. Like, why am I paying for this, right? So imagine
until it gets too hot. Then it's like, cool down, buddy. You're making me hot.
There you go. It's thrashing, right? Thrashing. Yeah, thrashing. No time to think, no time to pause, right?
Yeah.
But so imagine that we have this computational center, right? And many neuroscientists believe we have actually more than one brain. That's a whole different conversation. But from the type 1 thinking, the type 2 thinking, your amygdala, your lizard brain, your prefrontal cortex, how do you engage with it? So let me use an analogy that many of our people in the Agile community will understand, because almost every single corporation I work with, and perhaps you too, and maybe you can share, have a team that's working on implementing AI or blockchain, right?
Machine learning, you bet.
Yeah. So machine learning, they're all applying some sort of, because that's the future, that's buzzwordy, right? But if you go down to the core of that software, neural networks are not new. I mean, there's been 20, 25 years of research already into it. And cognitive computing. So at the essence of the machine learning is we train models by giving them solved problems and checking with them and making sure that the machine is learning that. And then we start to feed it unknown problems, right?
Sure.
So that it
or trick it.
Yes.
Right. And put what am I trying to say? Similar pattern to AI that we can't detect, and they start seeing gorillas in pictures of pandas, as an example.
Exactly, and solving problems that it's not beyond. I mean, artificial intelligence is not replacing humanity. I don't buy into that. It's more about augmentation in my mind, but they're solving problems in a very creative way. I remember when I was coaching in Capital. Yeah, training. Sorry.
Please.
Yeah. In Capital One, many years ago when I was engaged in coaching there, they had the leadership shared a video of a team that built a piece of software that was just doing visual tracking of this game called Breakout, right? The Breakout that the ball goes, bounces around, and they just by visual, just detecting the visual patterns, they start to feed the model and more complex levels. As the software learned how to play that game and never drop the ball, they found, the people who designed it, they knew already how to win the game. But then something magical happened. It was solving at unbelievable speeds from patterns that they would never have expected, right? Like placing the ball in a place that they would not have expected that would have resulted in that.
I see.
Coming back, now, what are we trying to do? We're trying to make software behave like a human mind, right? That's essentially the goal.
So we can upload.
Well, that's a whole ethical conversation, is a whole different thing, right?
We'll put that aside.
Yeah, that's a whole different, science fiction or science fact. Sometimes it gets blended. But imagine the manual for your own brain, right? So your brain pines for more and more difficult problems. So if I were to ask you a simple question like, Aaron, what are you having for lunch next Sunday?
I don't know.
So, right? Well, would you like to think about it?
I like thinking about food. Matter of fact, I have some right here.
Yeah, there you go. So the thing is, I don't know if you noticed this. Even that question, even though it's like a very test-for kind of question, but your brain goes into this mode. You're probably going to be thinking about that for a little bit longer. Okay, well, I like food, but what exactly am I having? So your
on it.
background processing is triggered.
Did I pass the Turing test? Am I under
We're all
test?
human. We're all learning. I mean, one of my friends say that Agile is not a natural way of working, right? So you have to kind of build that deliberate practice, right?
Mm.
So it's like learning to ride a bicycle, but at some point it's going to start feeling like flow, right? And that's the hope and aim and objective, that we start to take those training wheels off. So yeah, there's much more to it, obviously. And one other great giant that I always recommend to anybody I'm coaching, either individually or teams, is Dr. Marian Diamond. Dr. Marian Diamond, there's a documentary of her life called My Love Affair with the Brain. And I love talking about it. She's the scientist who had access to Einstein's brain. She would carry it around with her.
Oh.
And so she sliced and diced and said, well, what exactly was different about this brain? And the
Take
brain
pictures,
had grown.
sketch.
Oh, of course, physical. She's actually the second most popular lecturer from UC Berkeley on YouTube. She passed away too recently, a few years ago.
Oh,
but oh man, was she a bundle of joy. So I would highly recommend watching that video, because she is she's the person who brought up like neuroplasticity.
Gotcha.
Neuroplasticity. People say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? That's a famous saying.
I've heard that.
That's bupkis. That is totally untrue, right? So brain kind of is continuously growing. There's various ways you can train and grow it, and a single individual is different from like an individual in a team, and the team grows, and that's a different type of entity, right? And we've known that so its characteristics. It has task relationships, emotions, and all those other things. So to connect back to neuroplasticity, I don't know if have you heard of the rubber hand experiment?
I don't think so.
So a rubber hand experiment is where where the scientist goes out in the beach and he has a rubber hand, and he covers the real hand of a person and separated by a screen, and there's a rubber hand. So his real hand is on the other side of the screen, and there's a rubber hand up front, and he puts a blanket on both, and he starts to brush both of the fake hand and the real hand, and he takes a hammer and he slams the rubber hand, right? And in that few minutes of exercise where he's trying to the perceptive, the brain, the eyes are seeing, but they're being processed by the brain. The brain thinks that the rubber hand is that person's hand. So they feel a shock, they feel a jitter, even though all they hit was the rubber hand. And that goes back to the famous thing called, phantom limb syndrome. Soldiers who've lost limbs, they still feel like they have a hand with fingers and all these things that, what is going on there? So the brain is a
mirrors. That's what in prosthetics, sometimes they'll have somebody look in a mirror at a leg pictured in the mirror, and the phantom limb pain will go away. Or I was thinking about mirror neurons, the hit on the hand being felt in that reflection in those mirror neurons.
Yes. And me, I'm not an academic, so I probably can't talk as smart as possible, but I am definitely a person who's very much concerned about the practical part of it, right? The Praxis of what can I try? What can I keep on continuing? And I mentioned Norman in the beginning. He's the one who introduced me to this cognitive coaching world, right? Clean Community is another, but at 88 years old, he was unstoppable. It felt like he was doing more work than ever before, and he had bigger and greater goals than ever before. So I would say, there is a theory base, which is very important. There's a practice base that's very important, and in between there's this thing called praxis, right? And the praxis is what connects both of them, the mid-level abstraction. Like how you're connecting it, like how you mentioned the mirror analogy, right? That's praxis, taking that and connecting both of them. And that is very essential to the work we do. And I'm kind of borrowing that words from what I learned from the human systems dynamics community. which I'm sure you're familiar with the complexity domains and how they work.
What I'm wondering about, how do you right now find that intersection with all remote virtual?
I find it front and center, and amplified, right?
Okay.
Amplified. So I think you probably heard this. Many corporations, even though they've embraced agile, but there's the financial side of the house. They're still doing the annual strategic plan and funding, and a year upfront planning, right? And they say, well, these are all the projects that are funded. This is all the stuff that's going in, and then they have those KPIs that they measure, and then they track throughout the year. Well, how many people plan for COVID hitting our shores in March?
I think about this. I think about Kinevin and COVID as well. I just don't know how popular that might be to talk about. Anyway, back to you.
Well, and we can talk in layman's. I mean, at the end of the day, people who were prepared for it, right? I mean, tables. I mean, it was like black and white. Companies that were already practicing somewhat uncertainty, like technology companies. Software is complex. Software by nature is complex.
Non-deterministic and organic, evolving.
Exactly. So, and there's companies who were not very technology oriented, or struggling, or still in the old ways. Everything is determined, and it got clear. I mean, I mean, it makes me sad that big is beautiful again. Small companies, especially very, very small, they're struggling big time. Transportation. There's definitely some real pain. But then also look at companies like Amazon and Tesla and Apple. The profits they have made this year are not even in comparison. There are people running to buy, audio. I mean, me too, right? I did this too, right? Audio video equipment. I needed to get Elgato key lights and cameras, and I'm like, what? Everything is out of stock, right? What is going on? And I woke up very late, right? So. But there's companies that have astronomical results. And what's different? What's different? Because they were already fit for purpose in that organization where you have to survive, where you have to be nimble, where you have to sense and respond, and many times more.
Yeah.
So
resilient, more than robust. And that robustness of knowing, the conscious side, trying to get deeper, right? Into the unknowing, the non-predictable, that so much software development, product development really is centered in.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And the black swan events, that's the
Gaussian distribution. Something I remember from Mr. Snowden.
There you go. Well, now it feels like I think there's room for improvement or arguments for and against that too. But it seems like it's black swans have become black unicorns, right? That's the world. It feels like it's like I don't even recognize. That's what for many people it feels like they don't recognize it anymore, right?
Unicorns. Are you relating that to billion-dollar startups?
No, not quite. I mean, my analogies are more off the cuff, but I guess you could stretch it. I was stretching the analogy of black swans to like, okay, well, what the heck is this beast?
Magic.
And you and I have a common friend, David Hussman, right? So David Hussman was the reason, many
second time David has come up today. Tara Swanson
really?
was my guest this morning, and we talked about him. Yeah.
Well, that we got the dude references out, right? Mm-hmm. And Spinal Tap. I guess there has to be references of that too. So, so I was going somewhere with that. But David had a very famous saying, and I heard him say multiple times that what the heck is going on with these transformations? Like there's this agile transformation, that transformation. Like first it was a caterpillar, then it became a butterfly, then it became a three-eyed toad, right? So
yeah,
and that's just like the buzzwords and things. They serve a purpose, but then overuse of anything good has problems.
Okay, back to metamorphosis. This is hard, by the way, hearing yourself. That's why the
Oh, I
delay.
know, I
Yeah.
hear you. So I don't know, for the
Uh,
audience who may be watching this recording, Aaron can hear another Aaron is in his ear. So we have some audio issues going
delayed.
on.
Yeah. There's other voices in my head too. Actually, I'm going to take this out for a second. And just for a second, being able to talk to yourself is something else Tara and I talked about today. When you find yourself maybe in a beating yourself up and having that negative self-talk. And back to AI, sometimes in that pattern training, it'll spawn an instance of itself to talk to you and learn faster. And that might be where breakout could hit places where nobody would think about putting a ball. Maybe it's spawning instances to talk to itself. I don't know. Anyway, they're going to hear me again.
Oh, no, I love that. I love that. So, and I mentioned cognitive coaching, which is kind of my passion these days, many other things, Agile fluency, human systems dynamics. But since there's a theme going on, I'm going to continue with that one. So the researchers have found that we have about 50,000 messages that are generated by this cellular thing on our head, right? 50,000 messages. So self-talk and self-affirmation, this feeding of positive information. At the end of the day, just like gratitude and positivity is a choice, and it's important to work through those. And self-talk isn't, you would have heard most of the older gurus also say this, but it's important to have positive self-talk. And we found from researchers who've been practicing that actually applies in coaching too. So if nothing else, just saying that, giving yourself positive feedback. And I think Dan Pink also has a video about self-talk that he very clearly explains how that works out, much more articulate way than I do. But it connects back to what you just mentioned.
Amazing. What I find amazing, how much you must study and then finding the practice. And I want to know more about that and your own experience through all this.
Yeah, so I don't know if so there's good news and bad news, and I'm quoting Don Gray. So Don Gray and Esther Derby, they do coaching beyond the teams, and so Don Gray and Esther are also human systems dynamics professionals. They've been associated with HSD. So he lives in North Carolina. I got a chance to had a chat with him a few times, and I'd asked him like, man, I feel like my reading list is going at an exponential rate. Every time I talk to people, they give me 10, 20, 30 recommendations. And then I go down this rabbit hole and I feel like I can't catch up. And he says, there's good news and there's bad news. And I'm quoting him now and I'm sharing with you. This is
Thank you.
The good news is, the bad news is it's going to get worse.
Okay.
Right? And the good news is you're going to enjoy it so much. So I think as long as we're enjoying it, at the end of the day, it's experiences. Not to be morose. There's a fact of life. We're all going to die, and you can use that as an amplifier to focus and say, well, how do you want to live my life? For example, I want to have my future self, and that's my drive. Be proud of all the work that that past self would have done, and that's what drives me right now.
Okay.
So it's not a solved problem, but I think I'm enjoying the journey.
I hear you. Me too. I enjoy these talks, learning more about video. Between the live streams, went horse riding and talk about adaptive action. A couple of things happened. We had to be resilient and overcome immediately. It's fun. And the instant recall, it's very long ago that I was really last in that equestrian.
Yes.
It takes a lot, but it's there.
And I know you're a skiing aficionado and horse riding. That is wonderful. And there's wisdom behind that. That walk in the park or walk in nature or just pause and reflect. And I'm a proponent of meditation, but that quietness, that stillness, it's very important for the high performance and high demand work that we live in, that we have, that's demanded of us. So I mean, and going back to another, I guess I'm going to drop another name, Melissa Tiers. So okay. Melissa Tiers, she's written a book called Anti-Anxiety Toolkit. And I highly, highly recommend that. This is now, I mean, for me, I practice, what's called parlor tricks, right? Because I've learned from these masters and I try them and I find outcomes. I try with my teams. I find outcomes and go deeper into it. But at the end of the day, I'm just learning from masters. I'm building upon them. So Melissa is a master of anti-anxiety tips, and she talks about these 5 tips. And believe it or not, your horse riding would qualify as one of those, right? And so let me frame it. So Melissa and many other people, Daniel Kahneman, there's the type 1 thinking and the type 2. So your type 1 thinking, type 2 thinking, or rather 2 systems. The first system is the fight, flight, freeze system, right? It's like, oh, something's here. A snake goes by. Your heart starts palpitations, and your temperature is changing. Yeah.
Just for a second. Okay. Reticular activation system. Fight or flight. It's about the size of my pinky.
Yes.
That's about the size of the limbic. Yes. Neocortex. If the pinky brain triggers, you downshift, wig out.
Yep. And so Dr.
Sharon
Dan
Bowman.
Siegel, Dan Siegel has this hand model of the brain, right? The brain stem, with the lizard brain right here. And when something bad happens, poof, right?
Oh, yeah.
Blows up, right? So January 20th, we don't have a government anymore.
13th for me.
Maybe.
January 20th. Got it. I was thinking March 13th. I was thinking back when
well,
I went off the road.
I'm hoping everything turns out good. But there's many things that will in reticular activating system. So you're speaking the language of cognitive coaches, right? And your scotoma, your filters, what you think about, what you bring about, all those things are very much connected. So for you to, in those spots when COVID or chaos is happening, it's very important to take a pause and activate type 2, the system number 2. Breathing. Yes.
Keep that on.
Many of us, don't know how to breathe, or take a walk, right? Or do like bilateral stimulation. There's many things that Melissa talks about. I got a chance to study with her a little bit. Still just scratching the surface, but I think that's just amazing that there are people who spend their lives researching these things, and they're just opening these treasures for us to use.
Absolutely. Opening the door, allowing us to walk through on that path with their guidance and structure around it too, around that portal to go through. It's so great.
And just in appreciation. So Aaron, you were the one who introduced me, I draw, you draw exercise, right?
Yes.
From drawing. And I don't know how many times I've used it. And I say, well, if I had to give $1 to Aaron every time I use it, and I know you took it from Jeff, Jeff Patton and you were partners with way back when, but so I that's just, it's a 10-minute exercise, but every single time I've done it, people have come back to say, I've been through Scrum 101s, I've been through these long exercises, but this is the first time it really connected with me.
Excellent.
Such a
and now you can do it. You can talk and talk, talk through the Scrum framework. Anybody that draws along. It's great.
Yes. Well, true.
Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Wherever I can add value, it's value. I'm trying to refrain from saying a little and reduce, use that reduction language, which is easy for me to do when given props.
Well, isn't it Mark Twain who said, if I had more time, I would have written a smaller novel, shorter novel?
This is why my newsletter is announcing the Zoom passcode and also the live stream link for people to join us. I'm tired of copy editing. It takes so long. So does post edit.
And I love this style because it's least editing, it's live, it's right there. I mean, you would spend, what was you mentioned, right? It takes for every second, how many hours?
No
Looks
chat.
like we're getting a glitch, but that's okay.
Checking chat. Now we go back.
Do we have any question?
No, I don't think anybody's on, but they'll have all of this at the end. Let's get you back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to troubleshoot. I lost you again.
This is
There's
all
us on the
new.
live.
This is the new frontier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Zoom and OBS and Ecamm and what is it, a Black Magic?
Yeah, that's what I have.
And we don't get paid by them,
music.
so I'm not going to mention.
Where'd you go?
But looks like I'm seeing ATEM control, software control.
Here you are. I know. I think.
It's okay.
Let me make you big. No, that's me. There's not you. Just a moment.
It's somewhere hidden behind, but they can hear me. Follow my voice.
That's right. I'll find you behind the scenes. And
yes.
What I'm saying is, careful.
Imperfections is a thing of beauty.
You're there somewhere.
I know.
And there's all that
your spaceship
stuff. All that HDMI. All right, let's go back.
And I'm instead of looking at the camera, I'm looking at you now. 100%. Your new screen's popping up. And
Zoom window. Uh-oh.
That's okay.
There we are. A little laggy. Pull tilde D. Should go. There you are.
Well,
get that away. And there you really are.
There.
Welcome back.
Now.
Excuse me.
Happy to be back.
That's Sour IPA. Introducing a couple of operator errors.
Hey, you can't.
I wanted to check chat, just in case.
Yes, absolutely. And looks, that's fine. I think I also have a monitor on the other side, and that's showing me we're kind of still. Oh, there we go.
The delay on live.
Yes. It is. Is mind blowing. There's too many moving parts.
That's why I have to take this out occasionally and just talk like a regular human being.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating? How fascinating? Ben Zander would say.
That's right.
Right. Instead of going down, how fascinating. What can we learn from
failure Val?
How can
I learned? We learned.
Yes.
Thank you for the learning journey.
Yes, it is. It is.
And these things we're talking about, you have links, send them my way. I'll put them in the description. And I time code these after people can find stuff.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like I took the wind out of your sails. How do we get this back? Where were we?
I think, well, we were hoping some questions come up. Well, would you like me to ask you questions? How's that?
All right.
All right, let's switch around. So what are you looking forward for in 2021 for your own practice or for your hope and aspirations for Agile?
For Agile. Be able to do some more in-person work. I missed that to some degree. And what's really helped during the pandemic is realizing what's really important. That has really snapped together for me. And one of the things is, where is home? And it's right here around me. And not being on airplanes all the time. It kind of triggers me emotionally just to think about that. And I don't want to do it. It's bad for the environment. Potentially all the pollutants is more harmful to health than COVID. And really thinking about narrowing my focus to home, which is I mean, I live in Southwest Colorado. There's nothing around me to really do Agile wise. So
Yeah.
whatever is near enough, Denver, Salt Lake City, becoming more involved with Agile Denver. They have a special interest group meetup to kick off the new year. They decided to, again, cancel their conference for 21. And that diminishes revenue, of course. And so how do they keep going? Find ways to stay afloat. I want to focus on that too.
That's resonating with me. I mean, so you said a few things there. Number one, I miss the human connection. I mean, I was known to do exercises and, Agile games, my empathy toy, my Lego kit, all these things, right? But now I do feel like, my wings were cut. And so I missed that. And I have greater appreciation for the opportunities I was able to do with co-located teams, right? But now that's all gone. But part of, and something you said about what's home and travel and some of the other things that come with it. And I wonder, even for you, what would you like to keep, even when things go back to normal, whatever the new normal is?
Okay, this is dumb. I'm taking this out so I can talk a little normally. I want to keep this ATEM Mini with me. I want to keep these live streams going, even if I happen to be in Salt Lake, Denver. I'm learning so much from you, and I'm excited to go down rabbit holes. The thing is, they're infinite. You just come back up eventually.
100%, 100%. And that is fascinating. Everything, even in this strange distress, isn't that wonderful, that human spirit and, the beautiful world we share? There's these opportunities to make something and keep with us as this new thing emerges, right? So I'll share my own personal example. When I moved, I lived in Chicago for 17 years. I moved down to North Carolina 3 years ago. So when I came here, on my meetup account, my Dusty meetup account, I left all the Chicago groups, right? Okay. And I joined the local groups in Virginia and DC area, which is like immediate neighbors. But I left the Chicago groups. But then COVID hit, right? And then I started rejoining all of them because everything was on Zoom.
Exactly.
Right? I have attended, and I've had fortunate to be invited to speak in some of them too. But people were attending from Australia and Germany, the oddest time, New Zealand, and I was joining them. And it's like literally that one world reality suddenly became even more real than ever before.
Absolutely.
And I would love to keep that. Yes. And continue live streams. I mean, each of these conversations are unique, a time and place, a frozen in time, memories or whatever experiences, right? But these are lived experiences that can be amplified. And man, wasn't that delightful to continue?
I hope so. I feel so much loss right now and mourn not only for the old ways, there's people missing. This gentleman you're talking about, Bernard, last name, please?
Norman Bodek.
Norman Bodek, Bernard. Where'd that come from? Norman Bodek. B. I guess I got one letter in there.
No.
And all the loss because of this pandemic. It didn't have to all be centered in complexity and chaos. There were some pretty clear things to do. Maybe those didn't happen.
And you would appreciate this, Aaron, with your deep knowledge of Canavan, is like Dr. Glenda Young, who's the founder of Human Systems Dynamic Institute. Mm-hmm. She has, so in HSD, we have this, we don't go deep into the taxonomy, but we're very much about models and methods, 21 models and methods that we apply that are fit for function. And in that, there's a stable zone where, this uncertain, the level of certainty is very close to certain, the level of comfort and agreement is very close, right? But then you go in the middle, which is the emergent space, and then there's the unstable space, right? So one thing that Glenda said recent, like about, when the pandemic started, she does these power of inquiry sessions every day at noon Central Time that many people can join. And she said that in the unstable zone, in chaos, right? there is no patterns forming. In the unstable zone, there are no patterns forming unless the pattern is turbulent and chaotic. Then the pattern forms as the turbulent and the chaotic pattern. And then you can start to do something with it, right? So,
makes me think about the chuff on a wave, that sea foamy, intangible chuff. You can't ride it, you can't surf it, but you can see it, and it has a pattern of turbulence.
and at the end of the day, it's energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And energy can be used.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
Channeled.
what's still and not moving, there is no energy there. That's why,
Entropy.
we diversify. That's why innovation doesn't happen in monoculture, right? But sometimes you need stability and sometimes you need diversity. So it's a play. It's neither is evil, but and like my mentor Royce Holiday will say that the system or the system ain't naughty or nice. It just is. Right?
That sounds
so a conversation.
So existential.
But what do you do with it? What's the like you use the word adaptive action? What is the next wise action? What can I
like
what so what now what? Right? It's not that I sit there and admire the problem, but I do something about it.
Absolutely. And keep going in some direction. Just keep it moving.
Yes.
Keep the energy moving.
Yes.
I love that.
And just like, somebody has anecdotally say that, 85% of the things are not in our control, but then 15% are in your control, right?
All of this.
What do you do with that? Yes.
This is in my control. What do I do with it?
And, fortune
this life too. I like that adaptive action, but what's wise? What's wise to do for this life? The one we have. That Ahmed, thank you. Really helping some things formulate right now. There's some, I guess, synaptic connections in that neuroplastic network.
Well, I remember you saying it's not iteration if it's only done once.
Yes,
right?
That's Mr. Patton.
Okay, well, I heard it from you, so but you can pass it back to Jeff Patton too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And so it's very much human nature, right? The moment you stop doing, I mean, we'll rest when we pass away, right? But other than that, it's time to make a difference, live a life, yourself, self-care, family, friends, company. I mean, there's the interconnectedness that we need to appreciate. And, what a great experience to have instead of we're focusing on dark patterns, for example.
Sure. Accentuate the positive.
Yes.
Find it, take care of yourself, connect to others, see what's up with them, be aware, be mindful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Doug Silsby, heard of him? Mindful coach.
There you go. And that's another practice that's very useful.
I find it so. And that 1 minute mindfulness, don't manage, pay attention to the breath, see if I can, what interferes with just focus, helps me prepare to connect with others. And question for you. Does it help drop a little bit further down into that subliminal through the awareness, do you think?
I'm not sure if I follow the question. Like the mindfulness practice, are you asking about? Or
exactly.
So I'm not from the mindfulness community. They're established in a deep tradition from the Buddhist community. So and there's a lot of parallels from other communities. For example, the spiritual tradition I come from, we have meditation too, but it's not quite the same as mindfulness. But it does go much deeper, and I believe with practice, I don't know what else people have uncovered from it. but this, the self-awareness, the interconnectedness. There are so many things, and I would imagine our mindfulness friends who've done this amazing work, they're also achieving the same, goals. It's a fractal journey, but at a very different realm. The
I
more deeper
also
you go,
see
yeah.
the mindful as a secular way to talk about meditation.
Yes.
Can you say more about your practice and your religion? I'm very curious.
So yes, and that's probably another 30, 45 minutes because it's such misconstrued.
We'll come back for
yes,
sure. We
could.
can
So
go deeper, but something for now I'd
yeah,
really appreciate.
I'm Muslim, so I follow the Islamic traditions, and the Islamic traditions, which is the inner sciences are not as alive as you would hope. But if you talk about the Rumis of the world, the Shirazis of the world, there's many names. Some of the names that are popular in the Western culture. If you look at their tradition, they were more about the interconnectedness, the wholeness, the quietness, the stillness, and the sitting down with your eyes closed and meditating and focusing. That's a 1,000-year-old tradition. So I did have studied with some masters of what they call them Sufis. Sufi is the term they use in the West. Many people are unfamiliar with the term, or they quote it with dervishes or dancers, but it's much more deeper than that because many people are not into the performing arts. It's more about just silent reflection, focusing on,
Inward.
a spiritual part. Yes.
Why would you
Sorry.
exhibit that? Is I think what I'm hearing when you go inward, right? It's not a show.
But then, there is just like you would zoom into a leaf, and the more you zoom in, you zoom in, you zoom in, it just ends. It's just beautiful. It almost is infinite patterns that go in and deeper and deeper. And you can take lessons from it. You can enjoy the journey, but it's such a beautiful thing to behold, right? So same way, meditative practices from very different from the physical worship, or there's different types of worship, but it's at the end of the day, it's about connectedness. And it's not surprising that you feel connected with all people who have that belief, who don't hold that belief, and love for all, right? That's something that doesn't come innately, right? It is something that you have to train yourself. And what else to train? And this is where I bring in the idea of tolerance, the idea of gratitude, the idea of service to others. These things are something that there are deliberate practices that have been created. When a person gets all this anxiety and stress, right? One of the things, and even the HSD community, we also acknowledge this, that this is very much front and center as sometimes the next wise action to, hey, how frequently just hold still, meditate. And meditation could be, just a walk. You take a walk in the forest, right? That could be meditative. But the traditional meditation is sitting down with your eyes closed and focusing and removing all the noise around you. And that is magical. I'm a person who practices, I'm a student, but I have found that to be transformative in my practice. I've been in this Agile journey for 12 years. 2008, is when I embarked on this Agile journey, but I've been on the Sufi journey for more than 20 years. So, and in that, mentors and like students and lessons, and it's just like any other science. It has elements of it, and just like anything, it has use and abuse of it.
Sure. I imagine too, for you personally, there's a ripple effect. Things that come up over again, maybe you focus on. That's how it works for me anyway.
Well,
iteratively, fractally.
Yes,
Sorry.
Absolutely. There is the name of the community is skipping my mind, but my HSD friends introduced me to them. I think they're called the Interplay community. The Interplay community is also strange, very, very strange. They use the human body, like, hand and motion, physical motion, right, as a way to express complexity and connectivity. They use it in training, they used it in self-development, many things, right? And the very fascinating thing is to just look at this thing. And you said something about coming back, ripple effects. But imagine this thing, this very responsive thing. What is going on here, right?
Yeah.
It's responding to my thoughts, right? And this is no easy feat. But when did we stop and notice, like, what is this magical thing, and how is it even possible? And you can take it with the scientific lens, you can take it another lens, but at the end of the day, human experiences, right? So what you're feeling, we are human. We can feel sad. We have a spectrum, a range of emotions, but where we are and where do we want to be, right? And where do you take it is such an amazing opportunity.
Absolutely. We are nominally out of time, about hour-ish. We scheduled the meeting until 50, so minute or so over.
Wow.
How would you like to
time box?
Maybe?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Next.
Yeah.
What's next for you?
Just, I think as I look back, every opportunity is just so exciting. I'm just getting more and more excited. On one place, I all the reality that's there that needs to be honored and recognized, and just the amazing opportunities that are in front of us that have never been before. Hey, I never expected to be interviewed on YouTube. I've never expected to have my own YouTube channel. I never expected to do any of these things. Hey, English is a second language to me, but I think I'm just getting started. It's just getting warm. So there is so much to appreciate and so much to do more of. And I am having fun.
That is great. I look forward to the next time. So inspiring. Thank you. We'll have tons of links in the description. Until
Absolutely.
then.
And I owe you that. Yes.
When do I go on your show, by the way? We can talk later.
Well, I have to figure out the live stream first. But, when I do, I would love to have you on my channel. So
I'll be there.
Let's find a time.
Great. Terrific. Until then, we're back here. Thank you, Ahmed, and good night.